Skip Weber of the Weber Automotive Group.
A lot of 2026s have come in. Several of our brands, Traverse, Trailblazer, Equinox, we're all about 2026. I think Traverses, we still have a few 25s left, but the Equinox we've been selling 26 for a long time. But the reason why I say that is the stuff that we still have 25s, it's getting to be the point now. This is where there's a bit of extra money from the factory to clean out the old model. Usually September was the sweet spot for it, but it's a little bit sooner now. And it was usually all brands together. Now it's staggered. Right now is the time for a little bit better savings. Now, the other side of that is the selection's a little more limited. There's nothing coming behind them. If we don't have the color you want on the 25 Traverse, we don't have it coming behind it typically. But we can still work with you and find it somewhere else or whatever. My point is, good time to save a little bit of extra money buying the 25 new vehicles as the model year is about ready to complete switch.
Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive and 270, and online at WeberChevrolet.com. The Weber Automotive Group.
Love to eat turkey. Love to eat turkey. Love to eat turkey, 'cause it's good. Love to eat the turkey like a good boy should, 'cause it's turkey to eat so good. A turkey for me, turkey for you. Let's eat turkey in a big brown shoe. Love to eat the turkey at the table. I once saw a movie with Betty Grable. Eat that turkey all night long. 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. Turkey, turkey dee, turkey, turkey dap. I eat the turkey and I take a nap. Thanksgiving is a special night. Jimmy Walker used to say dynamite. That's right. Turkey with the gravy and the cranberry. Can't believe the Mets traded Darryl Strawberry. Turkey for you and a turkey for me. Can't believe Tyson gave the girl BD. Gobble, gobble dee, a gobble, gobble docky. I used to go to camp at Lake Winnipesaukee. Come on, Kevin.
No, that's okay.
Oh, it'll be fun.
Okay.
A turkey for me and a turkey for you. Let's eat the turkey in a big brown shoe. Turkey me and a turkey stuffing. Love to eat the turkey with a lot of stuffing. Turkey and sweet potato pie. Sammy Davis Jr. only had one eye. Oh, turkey with the girls and a turkey with the boys. My favorite kind of pants are corduroys. Gobble, gobble, gee, and a gobble, gobble, pickle. I wish turkey could only cost a nickel. Oh, I love turkey on Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
No, I'm just getting warmed up.
Don't be Rocky, you're a teenage guest as jockey now.
And let me begin by wishing you a beautiful look.
Who's ready for JC's Thanksgiving edition of the Sunday Showgram? Let's have a show of hands. Wait a minute, where's your other hand? Those aren't pillows.
Her second kid come out sideways. She didn't scream or nothing.
Now go pick up that suitcase. The lovely Emmylou Harris singing for us on a Sunday morning, 11/23/25. This is our Thanksgiving show. We'll get to the Sunday pickup here in just a couple of seconds, but I was supposed to be in that movie. I've told this story a million times just on the off chance that you haven't heard it. Here's what happened. John Candy, I was at a blues game one night, and they're like, hey, look upstairs there. There's John Candy waving at everybody between periods of a blues game back in the mid-1980s. And he got a thundering round of applause, and he looked really happy, and he was waving to everybody. And all we could find out about the movie, because it was a lot of it was being shot in St. Louis, although a lot of it was outstate. But it isn't like it is now. Even when George Clooney was shooting Up in the Air, we pretty much knew where they were every day. We were getting reports from everybody as to what was going on. But with planes, trains, and automobiles, pre-internet, all we could find out was that it was a movie about two guys who are trying to get home for Thanksgiving, and everything that can go wrong does. That was all we got. Now, at that very time, I was in a contract dispute with the lovely people at KC95. You may have read, from time to time, we just didn't see eye to eye on things. When somebody says, okay, here's the deal, JC, we love what you're doing. Now, you go in there every single day and you rock the boat and you name names and you just turn the place upside down, set it on fire. Now, if something goes wrong and somebody gets mad and like if we get sued or something, that's going to be all on you. You're going to have to handle that on your own. And I was like, wait a minute. How'd you come up with that? You want me to take all these chances, take all these risks, but then assume 100% of the liability on it? Oh, it even got better than that. They wanted me to indemnify them. So if something I said or did, like I said, didn't come out right and somebody got mad and somebody sued, not only would I have to spend all of my money defending myself with no help from the company, they wanted me to pay their legal bills too. And I was being wooed, shall we say. If you've ever been wooed, it's sort of fun. I was being wooed by a big radio station in Chicago, and I was like, you know what? This St. Louis thing just ain't working out anymore. I got a chance to go back and be on the radio in my hometown. I think I'm going to just redirect all of my efforts that way. And so as far as I was concerned, I was going to be leaving St. Louis. This was 1986. So they always had to, try to huff and puff and blow my house down. And so they would pull me off the air and they would always change the locks on the doors. This was big time theater, folks, on the part of the management there. You wonder why I have issues with management and authority and stuff like that. It's like, the humiliation of them saying, not only are we pulling you off the air for an undetermined amount of time, we're going to go ahead and change the lock so you can't even come in the building. What do you think of that? The building is open all day. Anybody could walk in off the street, open the door and walk in. I don't know what the big deal was. They thought I was going to come in the middle of the night, set the place on fire. I would never do anything like that. I'd use explosives. Good morning, everybody. So apparently when John Hughes, the director of the movie, came into St. Louis, they said, look, we have a scene where John Candy and Steve Martin's characters are driving up I-55 in the middle of the night. You know exactly the scene I'm talking about. John Candy turns into the devil. So anyhow, these two guys are driving along here, and there's going to be a scene where Steve Martin is asleep in the passenger seat. John Candy is driving along, and he starts playing around with the radio, and he picks up the Mess Around, which is a great old Ray Charles song, and it's supposed to be like one of these, sort of underground all-night radio shows. And apparently they came into St. Louis, and the production crew started asking questions. They're like, okay, who's the big on-air radio guy here in St. Louis? Who's like the big guy? And at the time, 1986, don't mind saying, the answer to that question was J.C. Corcoran. They're like, all right, get him, because we need him to record this thing that's going to be in the movie. Well, the only problem, like I said, is I guess technically it was a suspension. All I know is they changed the locks, and I was not on the air at the time. So they asked a couple of questions like, well, how do we find him? Where do we go? And I guess they got tired of waiting. And somehow, and this is so important in any form of show business, you got to be in the right place at the right time. Remember that conversation we had with Kenny Loggins a couple of months ago where he just happened to be down the hall in a recording studio when the lawyers for Toto screwed up something with the contract? They were supposed to sing Danger Zone for Top Gun. Sort of hard to imagine that now, Toto doing it. I bless the rains at an airbase down in Florida. Yeah, I mean, that's not going to work. But Kenny Loggins is right down the hall, and they're like, can you sing? He's like, yeah, why? Like, well, we got this thing here. It's Danger Zone. He's like, yeah, sure. And the next thing you know, Kenny Loggins is doing soundtracks for every movie on Earth. So you got to be in the right place at the right time. I wasn't. Al Hofer was. Al, the former venerable midday Casey Jock was there, and they said, can you record this? And so he did, and he made it into the movie. And as I've said 100 times, and he did a hell of a lot better job than I would have done. I would have schmaltzed the entire thing up. So congratulations to Al for being in the right place at the right time. Now, a little bit later on here on the Sunday Showgram, you're going to hear a piece that I did for Channel 4 News back in the day. This was about a couple of years after John Candy died, and obviously a couple of years after the release of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I was interviewing Steve Martin for a different movie, but I had a minute or so left over at the end, and I got into the whole PT&A thing with Steve Martin. You're going to hear that a little bit later on here on today's show. Last week, we talked about all the goofy radio station promotions and stunts and activities and things like that, many of which went awry, which is a fancy way of saying, we didn't think that was going to happen. Oops. And so today, we're going to deal with TV. And there's a couple of whoppers. Like I said, like we always say here, we're pretty sure the statute of limitations ran out, and so I can tell these stories. I'll be careful, as always. I like doing this show. There's no reason for us to get pulled off the air this quickly. We've only been on the air a couple of months. We thank Skip Weber and everybody at the Weber Automotive Group with 3 locations, Granite City, Columbia, Illinois, Olive and 270, online at WeberChevrolet.com. And if you need service vehicles and delivery vans and even like refrigeration trucks and things like that, Weber Automotive Group, which is normally associated with Chevy for obvious reasons, does have a Ford dealership in Granite City. And they have all that stuff. So it's something you can check out if that is what you need. And like we said, as we always do, to start off the Sunday Showgram here on News Talk STL 94.1, 101.9, it is semi-psychotic news stories, relatively unimportant, that have flown under the radar, and for good reason. We call it the Weekend Pickup. Well, speaking of picking up, I hate walking my dog, and then she poops, and you get the bag out, and you fill the bag full of poop, and then you're standing there with the thing just hanging, and then you run into one of your neighbors, perhaps one of your female attractive neighbors, and now you're trying to look cool, and you're working the bogus rap while you are standing there face to face while you're holding a bag of poop just dangling. Well, somebody's got to clean up after William Shatner, who admits, you think I'm making this up? I'm not, that he pooped his pants during his one-man show on Broadway in 2012. Here's the quote: "All of a sudden, I have to go. In fact, I'm going," to use the past tense. I had already gone. End quote. Yep, I agree. I could have skipped that one. Remember Susan Powder? Stop the insanity. She had that spiky platinum blonde buzz cut, and she's running all over the place. We had her on the air during her heyday. Stop the insanity. You got what is it? You got to move, you got to eat, and you got to. Well, the most important one is that probably save your money, which she did not. She is driving Uber Eats these days. She used to have $300 million. Somehow she lost it all, and she's driving Uber Eats. Kevin Spacey can't find a job. I'm starting to feel sorry for him. And a lot of the stuff that he was accused of got shot down, but it just doesn't seem like anybody's, willing to look at how the whole thing shook out. It just seems like people's attitude is, well, you had all those accusations. You must have done something. I mean, I get a lot of that myself. He says he lives in hotels and Airbnbs and that he can't find work. Here's how much people miss Diane Keaton. Movie came out a couple of years ago called The Family Stone, and it was awful. Some people would argue that it's a chick flick. I don't care. The movie stunk, but people loved the Diane Keaton character so much, they're going to do a sequel. I don't know how they're going to make that work. She just died a couple of weeks ago. And then there is Smokey Robinson. Gosh, that's one of those guys who I think everybody sort of respected. He was a music icon, a music producer. He was still touring. Everything was, just going great. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of former housekeepers said, yeah, son Rich couldn't keep his hands off him. He was always doing stuff. I think it was a total of 6 women who stepped forward. We should all be so lucky as to have had 6 people working as our servants. God, 2 new sexual battery accusations. Sexual battery. Bill Belichick looked absolutely ridiculous sitting in their stands watching his girlfriend's cheerleading competition. AAA, sort of useless. They tell us the same thing every year. They're predicting the worst travel days to be next Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the Sunday and Monday following Thanksgiving. That's the way it is every year. This next story I can understand because it's sort of my opinion too. I work my ass off. I work my butt off. And the people I work for know it. I'm not talking about one person or one radio station or anything like that, or TV station in particular. I'm just talking about in general. People know I work hard. And if I'm working hard and I'm getting results and you still don't want me, that's on you. New poll by the job site Monster found 47% of Americans have revenge quit and left a job abruptly. The top reason they gave was a toxic work environment. You know anybody who's happy with their job right now? People want loyalty to a company or a corporation, and then they lay you off the week before Christmas. People get mad. We don't have pennies anymore, and now we might not have nickels either. It was very interesting I guess it was about 20 years ago when Viagra and Cialis first came out. And you'd go to the doctor for, a hangnail or something, and they would say, you want to try some Cialis or Viagra? And I don't know any guy, because we've had these discussions around the radio station. We did 20 years ago when these things came out. And some people were a little sheepish about it, but everybody finally admitted that they had all tried it. The curiosity was killing all of us. Even if you're still in your prime as a man, there's nothing wrong with a little help, too. A little bump. The one guy that had not tried it up until that point was John Hewlett. And he had heard the rumors about there being a blue tint to things that you see an hour or so after you take it. You take Viagra and things start to look. And he was fascinated by that. He's like, so I just don't understand. So you take this pill and then I would look at you and your face would be blue? I said, well, first of all, John, if I'm taking Viagra, I don't really expect you to be around to see whether or not my face looks blue or not. But yeah, here it was, exactly 22 years ago. In 2003, the FDA approved Cialis. It immediately gave competition to the two existing ED medications because Cialis could be taken hours before the horizontal bump, whereas Viagra and Levitra have an hour fuse. I like that, a fuse. Apparently, all you have to do is be sort of old and heavy set and have a lot of gray and really white hair, and they'll hire you to be a department store Santa. Well, that's what they were, department stores. We don't really have a lot of those anymore, like a shopping mall. We don't even have that many of those anymore. So wherever you see Santa hanging out, it might be a good idea to make sure he's been thoroughly vetted. A business apologized for hiring a fake Santa who killed his wife in 2011. The man, by the way, had pleaded insanity and was released last year. I mean, I can see both sides of this. The guy's probably having a hard time finding work, and somebody said, we need Santas. All right, we got a ton of birthdays. Bo Derek turned 69, Joe Walsh 78, Veronica Hamill, remember her from Hill Street Blues, 82, former President Biden, 83, Dick Smothers, the only remaining surviving Smothers brother, 87, Troy Aikman, 59, Goldie Hawn, 80, Harold Ramis. I got to tell you, out of all the people I've ever met in show business, he is one of my all-time absolute favorites. Coolest guy ever. Writer, co-director of Caddyshack, Groundhog Day, Animal House, Stripes, Back to School, Meatballs, Ghostbusters. He would have had a birthday this weekend. He died in 2014. He was only 69. Stan Musial would have had a birthday today. He had a good run, born in 1920. First Rocky movie came out on this date in 1976. Whatever happened in Don Henley's swimming pool, and I'm not sure we're ever going to really know the answer to that. All we do know is that when Los Angeles paramedics showed up, there was a 16-year-old girl who was naked and suffering from drug intoxication. This was out at his pool. The Who Shot JR episode aired on this date back in 1980. More birthdays. Scarlett Johansson looking absolutely sensational at 41. Jamie Lee Curtis, 67. Stephen Van Zandt from Bruce's E Street Band and also The Sopranos. Another cool guy. We've had him on the air a couple of times, 75. Billie Jean King, 82. And Rodney would have been 82. Bruce Hornsby, 71. Kelly Brook, one of those, shall we say, full-figured, handsome females. Slightly on the big boned side, but nobody I know cared. 46. Super Dave, Bob Einstein, Marty Funkhauser on Curb Your Enthusiasm, and my buddy would have had a birthday. He died in 2019. When I'd be out on those press junkets in Los Angeles to go see a movie and then do the interviews, he would pick me up for breakfast and we'd go driving around L.A. and he'd show me stuff. We'd go eat breakfast and he would just tell me stories. He was the greatest guy. And another one of those sports movies like Rudy, where about 5% of it is true. The Blind Side came out on this date 16 years ago, back in 2009. The player on whose life the movie was made said, that stuff didn't happen. I don't like the movie. And We're happy for Kathleen Madigan from right here in St. Louis. The Family Thread is the name of her new stand-up special on Amazon that debuted on Friday. They're going to make a Frozen 3 and a Frozen 4. Everybody is back. Kristen Bell, Idina Menzel, Josh Gad. A lot of people think that what's happening right now with AI is exactly what happened a couple of years ago during the dot-com thing. This is like 2008, we had big problems, but then around 99, you had all those dot-coms, and the whole thing crashed, and a lot of people lost a lot of money, including everybody I know and me. For example, there were 14 dot-coms that were advertised during the Super Bowl in 2000. Only 4 of those companies are still around. Auto Trader, Last Minute Travel, which I've never heard, Monster, and WebMD. And I remember when my daughter was younger, I was trying to explain to her the concept of irony. And this would be an example that could be used. A 67-year-old hunter in Louisiana left his deer stand and was immediately attacked by an alligator. Whoops! That's all he got left. Got the alligator bit it. Oh, Amos Moses. First Jerry Reed reference of the day. That's it. That's how we start the show here, the Sunday Showgram, every Sunday on News Talk STL 94.1, 101.9. That is the weekend pickup. Let's play these and then start telling stories here on JC's Sunday Showgram. It's Howard Jones on JC's Sunday Showgram here at 94.1, 101.9, and the absolutely free News Talk STL app. If you miss any part of this show from 7 to 9 on Sunday mornings, don't forget, on Monday mornings, we send it to podcast, and all you need is the absolutely free app, NewsTalkSTL.com, and you can hear it. So tomorrow morning, an opportunity to enjoy me all over again. You know who I admire? Because I remember talking about this with regard to Andy Rooney. I got a chance to interview Andy Rooney when he was, he had to be pushing 90. And I was up in New York, and somebody set the interview up for me. And I went in, I was like, oh, God. I remember going up there thinking, I don't know if I want to do this. Every time I've ever seen him in an interview, he just seems so crusty and so combative and just not any fun to be around. So I go up there. The guy was an absolute prince. He was delightful. He was charming. He was funny. He gave me a tour of the entire 60 Minutes office. Could not have been nicer. And this is a guy who's going to work almost every day. And all I could think about is just think about everything that would be required of a 90-year-old body to do when you got to get up in the morning and get yourself ready. And, it's not just like you live in Florida and you throw on a pair of jams and a sleeveless T-shirt and some flip-flops and you head out the door. You got to wear a suit. You got to tie a tie. Think about how hard it would be at 90 years old to get your shoes and socks on. Forget the shoes. Just talk about the socks alone. There's a place on Brentwood Boulevard just north of the Galleria that is a medical supply place. And I know this because I had to go in there once, and the guy working the counter said exactly what I was thinking. He said, this store contains everything you hope as you get older that you're never going to need. Canes, walkers, toilet adapters, and things for people who can't stand up and sit down very well. And he was right. Almost anything you could think of that, you might need as you get really, really old, especially if you're recuperating from some sort of a procedure or major operation or something like that. They sell all of that stuff. By the way, I had to go in because it was when I was having spine issue. I'm still having them, but this was when it was first starting. There were these ropes and pulleys and everything like that, and then the thing would come down, and then you would put your chin into it, and it would stretch your spine. It's basically a rack. But again, all kidding aside, I'm serious about the idea of having admiration for somebody who can get up almost every day. And you're 90. I think he worked until he was 93. I don't know, maybe he had somebody helping him get dressed every day. Maybe he had somebody drive him to work. I don't know. Norman Lear was another guy like that. He was, like 101? And he was still doing situation comedies and specials and everything? The guy who invented All in the Family? Sometimes people, like a lot of us, you reach a certain age and you start wondering whether or not you want to live to be 101. Think on how you're going to look, how you're going to feel. Your skin practically translucent and big old giant knuckles. And maybe you're confined to a wheelchair and you're going blind and you can't hear. And I remember sort of, I guess, rhetorically asking the question, would you want to live to be 105 if your body was in that shape? And to a man, almost everybody said the same thing. They're like, and the alternative is? Perhaps they had a good point. Even Dick Van Dyke, who's 100, or is he 99? He's either 99 or 100. He's got a girlfriend who's like 49 or something. But even he, last week, was being interviewed, and he's like, this ain't everything it's cracked up to be. I know when you see me on Entertainment Tonight or something like that, I look real happy and upbeat and everything. I look pretty much the same. But let me just tell you, I'm freaking falling apart. Now you start getting into the cognitive stuff. We already know you're going blind and you can't hear. All your hair is falling out. Even if you're a woman, now the brain starts to go. I worked right across the aisle from Dick Ford when I was at Channel 5, and then worked with him again years later. But anyhow, Dick was a great guy and was just full of stories, and he just had all this wisdom, and he was a solid journalist and had been around forever. And as you start to get a lot older, I guess you would say the problems start to appear.
I also want to mention Taste of Clayton coming up on Sunday. Many of us from Channel 5 will be there. We're going to have a big tent and a lot of fun there. What Taste?
Channel 2.
Channel 2. Channel 5? Did I say Channel 5?
Yeah.
They're not going to be there. Channel 2 is going to be there. Channel 5 won't. They never show up at those things.
Okay, honest mistake, I guess. But then the other problem is people will write a news story for you, and maybe it would have been the kind of story that would have been better given to somebody else to read. I mean, if you're going to do a story about the new Nelly song, maybe you don't give it to a newsman who's approaching 80 to read.
What the hook gonna be?
I miss that guy. When you see what's working at Channel 5 now compared to the way it was 10 or 15 years ago, and once Mike Bush retires over at Channel 5, you're basically looking at getting your news every night in St. Louis from a team of journalists who've been out of college for about 6 months. So I've got a series of stories about television, behind the scenes television stuff. Last week we did all the radio stuff. Those stories were all true, by the way. That's what we do. I don't need to make anything up. First of all, my imagination isn't vivid enough to come up with some of these things that happened. At Channel 4, I used to sit next to Jamie Allman. Our desks were right next to one another, and something would happen in the newsroom, and we would just sort of look at each other and not even say a word. We didn't have to. We were both thinking the same thing, like, are you freaking kidding me? So one of the things that made talk radio popular was the fact that people could call in. You'd come on the air and you go, I think the tax situation in this town, blah, 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 blah. And then everybody who either strongly agreed with you or strongly disagreed with you would call up, and then sometimes you'd have a discussion, sometimes you'd have an argument, but that was the sort of the appeal. You'd get a larger-than-life host, and then you would push those buttons down, and that would be the show, and people would call in. And what happened was that consultants and program directors determined that too many of the callers were just too far out there. And then also, one of the explanations I heard was, look, I'm paying this guy $200,000 a year to do this show. I want to get my money's worth. I want that person talking, not some goof on the phone. Now, if I wanted to, I could poke holes in that argument from now until the cows come home, but that's the way it is. And even on TV stations, I mean, it used to be that way. People would call into television talk shows. When CNN, MSNBC, Fox, when all those stations started up, that's what would happen, and you would see it. Now, about the only place they do it is C-SPAN, and that's so dry and lacking any sort of form of entertainment qualities or values to it. So, that's no good. But for years on Channel 9, they've been doing the show called Donnybrook Your Turn. And you know how that works. After the Donnybrook show, 7 o'clock, 7:30 on Thursday nights, they'd say, okay, stick around. We're making 2 people stay late to shake out erasers. It's like, Bill and Wendy will be back to take your calls right after this. And then, the way it's supposed to work is that all the stuff that they were talking about on Donnybrook, all of those things would come up in conversation. Donnybrook, your turn. Your, meaning the viewer. Call in and tell us what you think about what Bill and Wendy said. And that's what they would do. And whether it's radio or TV, in this case, we're talking television. And this, by the way, that I'm about to play you, has not been doctored in any way. Not at all. What you're about to hear is exactly as it aired. You don't need the video. The video does make it a little funnier, but you don't need it. Does everybody remember Mark Vittert? Mark Vittert, are you outraged over the tax situation in St. Louis County? Mark Vittert's kid, but Mark Vittert used to own the St. Louis Business Journal, and he sold it for something like $30 million, and then he moved up to the extreme northern tip of lower Michigan. There's a little thing that sticks out way at the northern tip. It's even further north than Traverse City, and it's a little place called Leland, Leland. Leland Vittert is Mark Vittert's kid, and he's the guy that's on every night on that, what is it, Local News Now or something like that? News Nation. And apparently he's on the autism spectrum, and kids made fun of him and everything when he was a kid, and now somehow he's able to do a news show every night, having a child on the autism spectrum myself. I know that you can have very, very highly functioning individuals. But anyhow, on this one particular night, it was Mark Vittert, and he was the one that was going to be taking the calls along with Bill McClellan. And they sit there and they go, welcome to Donnybrook, your turn. Here's our phone number. If you've got something to say about the show tonight, something you want to discuss, that's what we're here for. We will entertain your calls. Let's go to the phones. Now, this is why I've spent so much time setting up this explanation so that you understand. Did you ever see a picture of a big control room, big radio or television studio? It's like walking into a cockpit of a 747, and you're just like, holy crap, how do you know what all this stuff does? And the truth of the matter is, you only use about 10 or 20% of that stuff. All of the other knobs and dials and everything like that are all for the engineers and the technicians and stuff if they want to adjust something. You have to know about what 10 or 20 of those buttons actually do. The rest of the time, you probably won't be messing around with it. However, and this is a damn big however, there is a very important button that has to get pushed on that control board before you do any sort of a call-in show. And the engineer, the technician, are usually on the other side of the glass, and then the 2 individuals who are doing the show are out there in the studio. And so that engineer, that technician, because the button would normally not be pushed in. So you got to remember this very, very important button that has to be pushed on this control board. And sometimes you'll be watching TV. Somebody will say, Bob, are you there? Bob, Bob, are you there? Can you hear me? All right, having a little problem. Oh, there he is. And it's because the technician was like, oh, crap, I forgot to push that button. And usually it has a little label on it, something like usually send, S-E-N-D, send. What does that mean? It means that it sends the audio from what the hosts of the show are saying. It sends it back down the phone line. Because as you can see when you're watching the show, they're not holding a phone up to their ear, so all of that is goes through that control board. And you push that send button if you're the engineer, and then when the caller calls in, they make their comment, and then they can hear the response of the hosts. That's how it's supposed to work, unless you forget to push that button.
Good evening. Welcome to Donnybrook Your Turn. I'm Bill McClellan, along with Mark Vittert, here to hear what you have to say about the issues we've discussed today.
Why don't we go right to Evelyn from Webster Groves. Evelyn, are you there? Evelyn, go right on ahead, ma'am. Evelyn, are you there? Yeah, I think
okay,
Evelyn.
Evelyn, let's try it again. Maybe call back.
Oh,
you there? Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead, Evelyn. Go ahead,
yes,
Evelyn.
I'm here.
Go right ahead.
You're not hearing me?
Yeah, we're hearing you now, Evelyn.
Go ahead, Evelyn. Evelyn, you need to turn your television off if you're listening to
Hi.
it. Okay.
I would like to just say, I'm sorry.
Evelyn, you need to turn your television off if you want to talk
For
to us.
some reason, I'm not getting through.
Okay, Evelyn.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, Evelyn, try to
hear
say
me
what
at all?
Yes, we hear you now, Evelyn, so tell us what you want to say.
Hello?
Okay,
Yes.
Evelyn, try to call back. Try to call back if you would. Yeah, try to call back, Evelyn. We'll be here waiting for you.
Yeah.
And let's go to Bill from Carrollton. Bill, are you there? Bill from Carrollton. Bill from Carrollton. Are you there? Well, Bill, if you're calling from Carrollton, Illinois, that's a town I spent some time in and sure liked a lot. I hope are we with you at all? Bill, try and call back if you can from Carrollton, and we'll go to Henry from St. Louis. Henry, are you there? Well, I swear to God, I got pits. I got pits. Oh my God. And then he goes.
It's JC's Sunday Showgram on NewsTalkSTL.
Last weekend, I got asked to play golf at a beautiful course down here in Florida, right at the southern tip of the Bay Area. Some people I ran into at a baseball game when the Cards played the Rays here. A couple of people recognized me, asked me to come out and have a couple of beers with them in right field. I went out there, and I gave them a card, and so they invited me to go play golf. Now, I haven't played in 6 years because I've had a hip replacement, I've had back problems, I have had a recurring problem with my right thumb. All of my factory-authorized parts are coming out of warranty. So I went out, and I played, and it was a reasonably challenging course, and I played like somebody who hasn't played in 6 years. Although there was one shot where the ball was on the outside of the lip of the green, about 40, 45 feet. I chipped it, went right in. It was the only decent shot I had all afternoon. The reason I'm bringing it up is because in 6 years, man, has the technology in golf carts changed. Now, maybe this isn't everywhere. I mean, if you play the Highlands at Forest Park, maybe the golf carts there aren't like that. But at a nice country club here, there's a computer screen, and a big computer screen. And it gives you a very, very detailed picture of the hole you're about to play. Even if they've just, recently put down hazard warnings or something like that, all of that is on this picture, color picture. The really, really dark green is, thick green grass. The lighter green is the fairways and greens. It tells you how many yards away you are. You take your first shot, you drive up in the golf cart, you get out, you look, there it is. It gives you the update of where your ball is in relationship to the hole. And if I sound like a total dork here. I apologize, but like I said, I haven't played in 6 years. So, any improvements that are taking place in the golf industry, I've been blissfully unaware of. But the thing that really, really blew me away is that one or two of our shots went awry and into an area that was cordoned off. What a surprise, huh? So we're driving around in the cart, and all of a sudden it starts beeping because apparently the whole thing operates via GPS, and it was telling us, hey, there's markers down here. There's barriers. You're not supposed to be here with the cart, which I can understand because you could make a mistake, sort of lose track of where you are, and so you're driving and go, oops, I'm not supposed to be here with the cart. Let me get off right away. But the thing that blew me away was the fact that that information is then sent to the clubhouse. So everybody back in the clubhouse knows that you just drove your cart into a restricted area. And if you do it again, they send somebody out to give you the hook. That's right. You're out there on the links trying to enjoy a nice afternoon playing golf, and your own golf cart is narking on you.
I play golf. I'm not good at golf. I never got a hole in one, but I did hit a guy. And that's way more satisfying. It's not like seeing a guy you don't know drop 100 yards over. That's right. I hit a guy in one. What's par for hitting a guy? It's one. If you hit a guy in two, you're a hole. You're supposed to yell four, but I was too busy mumbling. There ain't no way that's going to hit him.
News Talk STL 101.9, 94.1. We got another hour to go. And if you like that Donnybrook thing, you're going to like these stories about the internal workings, the behind-the-scenes stuff, some of the stories that I collected after being in television for 16 years in St. Louis. More Thanksgiving stuff, and then Arlo is going to check in. Stick around for hour number 2 of the Sunday Showgram.
Sir, is this the Delta House?
Sure. Come on in.
You know, I have been thinking about this. You know what makes people violent? I don't think it's television or films. I think it's alarm clocks because it wakes you up abruptly, puts you in a bad mood. You're irritable, you're cranky. I think you should just wake up naturally with an alarm clock that has a human voice, like, come on, buddy, time to get up, pal. You're looking good. You got the whole day ahead of you. Come on, out of bed. Come on, let's go. Up you go. Come on, buddy. Come on. Up you go now. Move it. Let's go. Move it. Move it. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Then you hit the snooze alarm. Sorry, buddy. I didn't know what I was talking about then.
Most of us on waking in the morning know exactly where we are. The rooster or the alarm clock brings us out of sleep into the familiar sights, sounds, aromas of home and the comfort of a routine day ahead. Not so with our young friends. This will be a day like none they've ever spent, and they'll spend it in the Twilight Zone.
No, I'm just getting warmed up.
Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. Turkey with all the trimmings. We are celebrating Thanksgiving. Because Sam's back and I got him.
Oh, Jean Marie, you're a stitch.
No, Mom's gonna do the turkey. Yeah, Dad wants ambrosia, so I guess we gotta get those miniature marshmallows. And I'll do the crescent rolls, and you do the cranberries. You know I can't cook. Yeah, well, I'll see you tomorrow then. Gobble, gobble. Oh, bye-bye. Welcome to Marathon. May I help you?
Yes.
How may I help you?
You can start by wiping that dumbass smile off your cheeks.
I was doing an interview with John Hughes once, and all he said about Edie McClurg was, you wouldn't believe the stuff I have on the floor from her, which is a director's term for all the stuff that was cut out of the movie. The first draft of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was 4.5 hours long. And the studio kept giving him heat. And there's a lot of people who don't understand the character of Steve Martin's wife in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles because there's a little bit of a continuity problem. She might not have necessarily reacted in a certain way, in a certain situation. But when you remember, her role was much more expanded in the original cut, and a lot of it would have made a lot more sense. She believed, in the movie, in the original cut, she believed that Steve Martin's character was having an affair, and they were going back and forth a lot. There were a lot more phone calls and stuff like that. There was also a scene when... Now, in the movie, Michael McKean, who plays a state trooper, pulls them over, and that's when John Candy gives his speech about, everything is, we lost everything in the fire, but the radio still works. Isn't that amazing? The radio, clear as a bell. It is at that point in the original cut that the state trooper tells him, well, maybe because you have no functioning gauges, you don't seem to understand something. You're about an hour past the Wisconsin border. And that's when they had the car impounded and then had to take it away and come back on the refrigeration truck. There's so much stuff in that movie, and I could go on for hours talking about all the different things that I know about it. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's all about that relationship between the two characters and the ending of that movie. Because there's a lot of really heavy-handed stuff you see in like Hallmark movies and stuff like that where they force the idea of Thanksgiving and family and, trying to take care of other people and stuff like that. And they sort of force feed it to you. But in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the message of that movie was completely something that put people back on their asses. And if you remember the first time you ever saw the movie, I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about this right now because I happened to see the movie in New York. And when that happened at the end of the movie, there was just like an audible gasp in the theater. Now, a couple of years after John Candy died, and obviously a couple of years following the release of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I was in New York and I was interviewing Steve Martin for a different movie. We had a couple of minutes left at the end, and I was like, you know what? I got to get this question in about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And he was actually surprisingly gracious about it. And so with that in mind, here is the story that I filed for Channel 4 News with Steve Martin.
And, of course, the Christmas movie that everyone wants is A Wonderful Life. But what about a Thanksgiving movie? Tonight, J.C. Corcoran talks with actor Steve Martin about a familiar film which was partially shot in St. Louis.
You know you're in St. Louis?
Yes, I do. Despite what these scenes around Lambert Field might suggest, Steve Martin has fond memories of the month he spent here shooting the 1987 comedy Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. The story of a businessman trying to make it home to Chicago in time for Thanksgiving. Along the way, everything that can go wrong does. And along the way, he gets caught up with an obnoxious but big-hearted traveling salesman played by the late John Candy.
I don't want you to sit here and kind of mourn the death of John, but tell me something you remember about your months together doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
It was the first day of shooting. He brought all this exercise equipment in. Just, jogging things, stationary bikes and weights and everything, and then never touched them.
Is this a coincidence or what?
Also, he was a brilliant actor, especially in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I think it was his best work. The first cut of the movie was 4.5 hours long, so I think 2 hours got cut out.
I like me. My wife likes me.
I saw him do scenes that aren't in the movie that are just breathtaking.
And if some of those scenes seem almost too real, Martin told me it may have been a case of more than just good acting on Candy's part.
Well, he was a very sweet guy, very sweet and complicated. And so he was always friendly, always outgoing and, funny and nice and polite. But I could tell he had kind of a little broken heart inside him.
And so, two characters in a movie who appear to have nothing in common find they're probably more alike than they ever thought. It's John Candy's finest hour and a great message for the holidays. J.C. Corcoran, News 4.
Oh, my God. I can't wait to watch the movie again. Just like It's a Wonderful Life is for a lot of people around Christmas time. It is a tradition. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Why not? Of course, yesterday was the anniversary of the JFK assassination back in 1963. I'm sorry if you missed it a couple of weeks ago, but I went through the entire sort of account of what it is like to go to the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas, Texas, where they have a tour that you can take. It's a multimedia thing, and you get to look out the window, and then you're standing by the grassy knoll and doing all that sort of stuff. Like I said, I'm sorry if you missed that, but it is a trip that everybody should take, and it pulls a lot of things into perspective. I don't want to go through the whole piece again, but one of the things that you definitely notice immediately is how close everything is. You know, when you see the tapes and the films and all that sort of stuff and all the documentaries that have been done, you look at it looks like the distance from where Lee Harvey Oswald was down to where he shot Kennedy, if in fact you believe that. A lot of people do, a lot of people don't. But that distance is so close. Like I said, it looked like you could open the window, take a quarter, and just flip it off your thumb, and you could hit that X on the street. And the same thing with the grassy knoll. It looks like it's half the length of a football field from the street to that little white fence at the back end of the grassy knoll. It isn't. I gauge everything by the distances on a baseball field. You can take me pretty much anywhere, and I'll mark off 60 feet, 6 inches within a couple of inches. I got it down so well. Similarly, I know the distance from home plate to first base, 90 feet. Or the distance from home plate to second base. That distance in Dallas is not even that length. It's not even 90 feet. Maybe 90 feet. But that's it. And being a kid on the south side of Chicago, 2 blocks away from Midway Airport, I just remember, we were off school and it was Thanksgiving. There was also a real controversy involving the National Football League, because it's not like it is now where, football on Thanksgiving or the Thanksgiving weekend is like the biggest thing in the world. Back then, it was still a big deal, but like I said, not the way it is now. Anyhow, you're just a couple of days out from the Kennedy assassination, and the NFL had a decision to make. Do we play on Sunday or do we not? And a lot of people got very, very mad at, I guess Pete Rozelle was the commissioner at that time. And he said, no, let's go ahead and play because the country needs this right now. The nation needs it. And whether that was sincere or not, it was probably true. Not any different, really, from the Cardinals resuming play and Jack Buck being out on the field with his poem prior to the first game that the Cardinals played after 9/11. I was standing on the field, maybe 30 feet away from him when he delivered that speech. It was just very, very surreal. Speaking of anniversaries, and those of you who used to listen to the old morning showgram on K-Hits 96 will remember we had a very close relationship with the people at St. Louis Magazine. I, in fact, had dated briefly the publisher of St. Louis Magazine, and she hates when I bring that up, by the way. That is a story in itself. You know what? I wasn't going to do it, but I should tell that story. So anyhow, we had a saleswoman at Casey at the time, and I was a single guy. I'm just looking around, and one of our sales women, lovely gal by the name of Jane, she set up a lunch with the 3 of us. Her friend, I won't say her name, her friend, her, and me. I still remember it was at Mike Telania's. And when you come to Mike Telania's, I would love to meet you. And one thing leads to another. And at that time, I think I was 31. She was fresh out of college at 23. Still living at home in the Chesterfield Valley. And those first dates, you got to really be careful. People always make the mistake of like going to a movie. Now you're sitting next to this complete stranger and you can't talk because the movie's going. That's not any way to meet anybody. The way to meet somebody is, I always think, take them to a party. Because everybody's in a good mood, everybody's drinking, everybody's inhibitions are down. You're watching this person that you're trying to get to know interact with other people. You sort of see, what kind of person she is. You see how the two of you are getting along, and you get an opportunity to see somebody in real game day, conditions. So my boss at the time was having a house party at his home in South County, and I take this woman along with me to the party, and we're having a great time. But I also notice that this young woman that I have asked to be my date at the party is reaching a point where perhaps she has been overserved. Happens to everybody, no biggie, right? So I decided to get the hell out of there. It's just time. It's time we leave. and I'm going to drive her back to her house. She lives with her mother and father in the Chesterfield Valley, and I'm going to take her home. No, I don't want to go home yet. I don't want to go home. It's not that late. Let's go to your place. Get an offer like that on a first date, you're not going to turn it down, even though it is under perhaps false pretenses because she's hammered. So I was living in this apartment in Kirkwood at the time, and so we go back to the house, and we lay down on the couch. I turned the TV on, and we're just laying there watching TV. But now it is getting late. I'm thinking to myself, I got to get this girl home. The last thing I want to do is fall asleep on the couch. You know, it's like that song, Wake Up Little Susie. First date, she's living at home. So, I don't know, we're watching TV, and when the show would end, I'd say, okay, show's over. What do you say we get you home? No. And she would nuzzle in a little further into my neck. And I have a little issue with that. A woman nuzzles into my neck, and that's it. We ain't going anywhere for a while. But again, I'm trying not to fall asleep. And so we watch another show. And again, I say, I think it's probably time we get home. Anyhow, that goes on maybe one or two more times. The next thing I know, the phone is ringing. And I wake up, and it's light out. And I look at the clock, and it's 5 minutes to 7 the next morning. And it is Jane, the saleswoman who set me up on this date. And she's like, I can't say the girl's name. Let's just call her Shirley. Okay? Shirley. Shirley's parents are wondering where she is. She didn't call. She's not home. Is she with you? Where are you guys? Now, meanwhile, Shirley, who's no longer drunk, wakes up and goes, oh my God, what did we do? I go, we didn't do anything. We fell asleep. How could you let that happen? I'm like, how could So I got two people yelling at me. I got Jane on the phone, and I've got Shirley who's yelling at me in my apartment. I got two women yelling at me. I didn't even do anything wrong. I'm a victim of circumstance. It is at this point that I remember that Shirley's father, whose home she is living under the roof of, I just finished a sentence in a preposition. Sorry about that. Anyhow, I just remember he's an ex-Marine. And so at this point, I get her in the car. I start driving towards the Chesterfield Valley. My recollection is a little fuzzy, but I think I slowed the car down to about 20 miles an hour and just like push her out and just then hit the gas. I'm sure I'm going to get my face rearranged from Lee Ermey from Full Metal Jacket. Oh, what story was I in the middle of telling? I don't even remember. Was I done with the Kennedy assassination? I sure hope so. For God's sakes. Oh, and then the other anniversary is coming up on Tuesday, and that was my final day at Casey as host of the Morning Zoo. And to this day, there's still a lot of people who don't understand why I left the radio station, because things were going great. The station was making money hand over fist. I had salespeople coming to me saying, thank you for putting my kid through college. That's a true story. Now, the problem is that my contract was up, and if you'll recall, those of you who were around in the mid-'80s, people were always, on my ass about something. Oh, we're just fun-loving guys, me and you, man. We're just laughing, DJ, everybody. We think it's funny that people are getting so worked up about three boneheads on a morning radio show, and the more they overreacted to stuff, the more we overreacted, and people were threatening to sue us all the time and everything like that. It was like, hey, calm down, everybody. And a couple of people sued us, and a couple of people threatened to sue us. So anyhow, my contract was up, and the contract that they slid in front of me was absolutely ridiculous. Basically, they were saying, hey, we love all the money you're making for the station, and you go out there and you rock the boat, and you just go, you do what you do, JC. But if there's a problem involving legal affairs, you're on your own. Not only did they want me to pay my own legal fees, they wanted me to pay their legal fees. They're a corporation. They've got stations all over the country. They've got hundreds of millions of dollars. But some politician or some competitor or, somebody from the VP Fair or something decides to sue me? Right. I'm going to pay my own legal bills and theirs. So I didn't really have much of a choice. And I was getting job offers in Chicago, and I figured that this thing is just run its course. Well, I finished the show on the 25th of November, 1986, and when I got off the air, they said, you just did your last show. And I put all my stuff in a box, and I went home. I ended up not liking the way the Chicago offer shook out. KSD came along and offered me the world and a half. We went over to KSD, we changed it into a classic rock station, and the rest is history. So that's what happened. What's interesting is that even when people know the story and they realize that had they been in my position, they probably would have done the same thing. That's still not good enough for most people. They still yell at me.
It's already popping out there.
It is. Good morning.
That's amazing.
This makes this market the oldest continuous farmers market west of the Mississippi River.
That's amazing.
There's just a giant variety of things here.
That's amazing.
100% of our vendors here on Saturday.
It's amazing.
It's the biggest investment that the city has made in Tular's farmers market in decades.
That's amazing. God bless America.
Annie Crawls coming up with sports.
And though the Cardinals center fielder Victor Scott has had a bit of a slump in June, hitting about 1,800 this month.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Brent Solomon. Crews are working steadily at this hour, bringing up pieces of American Airlines Flight 5342 from the Potomac River. That plane and an Army Black Hawk helicopter from the Potomac River. I'm Brent Solomon.
All right, time now to answer our Wednesday fun fact. Here it is. Which famous song by Doris Day was featured in the 1956 thriller The Man Who Knew Too Much? Well, the answer is Q, Sarah, Sarah. Whatever will be, will be.
I'm Brent Solomon.
We are just weeks away from the next total solar eclipse.
Officials over in Terre Haute, Indiana, the average visitor spends about $183,000. Or $183, I should say. For more information on next month's total solar eclipse. I'm Brent Solomon.
Thanks so much for waking up with us. I'm Taylor Holt. Paul McCartney has been reunited with a bass guitar, the Hofner Bass. What they had was the stolen bass. I'm Taylor Holt.
And tonight on 5 Plus, make sure to catch the latest episode of Mike Bush's podcast, and there you have it. This episode, he speaks with a longtime radio and TV personality, J.C. Corkerkin.
Yeah, local TV news is not the way it used to be when I was in it many, many moons ago. We actually had competent people, and if you misspelled something or if you mispronounced something or if you just did something wrong, there was at least one, maybe even two people waiting for you when you came off the set to say, hey, people don't spend $183,000 a piece on a solar eclipse, Brent. Oh, my God. It's not to say the local TV, even when it was good, didn't mess up, because they did. News stations are very competitive, and especially in the 80s and 90s, there was a thing going on primarily between Channel 5 and Channel 4. Channel 5 had dominated for so long. Channel 4 was sort of like of the mind that, hey, we've added some people and we've done some stuff, and we're going to come after you because the days of just laying down and letting Channel 5 rule the market are over. Let's go. The problem is the guy running in the place was a gimmick master. Any gimmick you could come up with. Let's see if I remember. The lightning locator. Back when the satellite and radar technology was still in its infancy in terms of weather forecasting. It's not the way it is now where you can get every piece of information on weather right on your phone. You just hold it right in your hand. Back then, hey, we got this thing that shows where the lightning hit. Okay, let's make a graphic, the lightning locator. And then that didn't generate much of a response. So then they came up with a thing called, for Zipper Zeppa, when he was on Channel 4, CompuScore. And the premise was that sometimes you're right in the middle of the 10 o'clock newscast and Cardinals hit a home run and there's a walk-off and you end up winning 6-5. And that's really what all sportscasters did. It says, hey, we just got word Cardinals hit a walk-off home run. They won 6-5. But Channel 4 put a giant computer terminal right on the desk where Larry and Julius and Zip would sit, and he'd be in the middle of his sportscast, and all of a sudden just go, oh, Slow's basketball team just scored a three-pointer. They lead by 3. Come on. Now, during the rating sweeps, which happens a couple of times a year, the big ones are in May and November. For a period of about a month, the rating services are calculating who's watching what. And then if your ratings are really, really good, you can start charging more for commercials. So TV stations, especially on the news, would always come up with these big whiz-bang, blammo, what they would call series pieces. Usually meant, that the story was so extensive and there was so much investigating. We can't fit it into one night. It's going to go on for not 2, maybe 3 nights. I did a Wheel of Fortune thing out in California that ran 5 nights. I mean, you have a good idea. The word spreads very, very quickly. And the queen of scaring the hell out of you was Lisa Zigman. Lovely gal, by the way, and very, very pretty. And very, very sexy, I should point out. More than one person at Channel 5 at the time told me that at parties and stuff, they would say, oh, let me introduce you to Lisa Zigman. Lisa, this is my friend Tom. Tom, Lisa. And these are Lisa Zigman's breasts. Apparently, she had a good attitude about it and took it all in fun, but it was dramatic. Let's just leave it at that. If you go to a park and there's a slide for kids to slide down, if that slide is made of metal or even some plastics, if it's been sitting out in the sun all day, guess what? It gets hot. And if your kid slides down a hot slide, they're going to get burned. Lisa would come along and warn you not to do that. You're in bed in the middle of the night. What's that noise? What's that noise? I don't know. Get up and check, honey. Look under your sink. Common household products, if not stored properly, can pose a hazard. And around the TV business, loose lips sink ships. So somehow, I don't know, word got out that Deanne Lane was going to pose as a homeless person on the streets of downtown St. Louis. Scrub up all the makeup, put the hair down, put a pair of glasses on, put a hat over your head, and wander around the streets all night of St. Louis. Hidden cameras will record all of this, and then Deanne will explain to you how difficult it is out on the streets of St. Louis if you're homeless. Somehow the word leaked out, and Channel 4 rushed into production Larry Connors posing as a homeless man in the streets of St. Louis. So you had both of them out at the same time. I don't know. Maybe they even ran into one another at one time. Hey, Deanne. Hey, Larry. When is your piece running? Next Wednesday. Got to be careful. Got to keep your mouth closed. But shortly after I got to Channel 4 in the early 1990s, Channel 4 hired this new news director, and as far as I'm concerned, the guy was certifiably nuts. And he was running the newsroom. And I could tell you a lot of stories about situations where you come out of a meeting and people would just look at each other like, is this guy crazy? And the answer would be, yes, he is. So if you've lived in St. Louis any appreciable amount of time, you know the stories about the Catholic Archdiocese over in Metro East being of a dubious reputation. So Channel 4 says, what if we rent a hotel room in the Adams Mark Hotel directly across the street from Channel 4, and we set up a camera up on like the 20th floor. We rent a room at the Adams Mark on the 20th floor, and we shoot with a long lens camera across the plaza there into the room. We hide a microphone inside the room. We hire a male prostitute, and then we try to set up a Metro East priest. Guess what? Guy running Channel 4's newsroom thought he was Alan Funt. You're on candid camera. That piece never aired. Couple of people got fired. Couple of people got reprimanded. Channel 4 had to really bend over and spread their own butt cheeks for the Catholic Church, especially over in Metro East, to apologize and make amends for, shall we say, a questionable decision. Now, I have at least another half dozen stories similar to that to tell you about local television news. But if we're going to get Arlo in here, which I have promised that I will do, we're going to have to save those for another day. And just a reminder that everything we do here on Sunday morning goes to podcast on Monday morning. Just download the absolutely free News Talk STL app And on Monday morning, you get the podcast version of The Sunday Show.
The J.C. Corcoran Podcast.